am pretending to be Tammy Jackson because she is running late. She had another meeting, but no worries. Tammy Jackson is going to be presenting from BPDD. I am Sally Flashberger, and I am also on staff at BPDD, and I work on our partners in policymaking and also a grant called the Living Well Grant. And I'll have Jenny introduce herself.
Hey everybody, I am Jenny. Can you hear that? Okay. I am Jenny Newgard. I'm also from the Board for People with Developmental Disabilities, and I coordinate the Partners in Policy Project, voting, Sparks, Youth Leadership Forum, lots of fun leadership training programs.
So we are very passionate about advocacy. So we wanted to be sure to have a pre-conference session to really help you learn about ways that you can advocate in your communities with your state legislature on issues that are important to you. So we're going to go through and kind of talk about all those different ideas, like who are your local folks, who are your state legislators, what issues are important to you. You're going to develop your own story. You're going to try to figure out who are your local legislators. So if you have a smartphone, you'll be using those throughout. We have some computers that we can walk around the room with to help you when we do those activities also. And so help your neighbors out at your table when we get to kind of those activities. So first, let's kind of talk about our local decision makers. So there are so many people that are in your local community that make decisions about the services and supports you might get, transportation. Who was saying about transportation? This young lady over here was talking about transportation. So we want to be sure that we are talking about what people in your local communities are there to kind of improve opportunities for people with disabilities. So sometimes it's starting to think about the people that you know in your community, and then thinking about their lives, what they know about people with disabilities. Do you maybe does your alder person go to your church, or did you meet them? I was just somewhere, my daughter and I were at the brewery on Saturday, and I said, oh, there's the Waukesha mayor. And she's like, are you sure that's not the county executive? And I said, no, that is the mayor. The county executive is this other guy. And so you just never know where you might run into somebody locally. I really wasn't going to go up to him and say, hey, we have this problem in Waukesha. But again, you just really never know where you might meet people. Come on in, make yourselves at home. Hi, Tina. How you doing? So always think about what options are available to you in your local community. So who are those really local decision makers? So often I did a lot of special ed work when I was in my previous job at Disability Rights. So as a parent, I'm also the parent of a young man with a developmental disability. I often would find out who was on my school board and go to those meetings. So that is one of a really great local opportunity for you. And so school boards should be thinking about special education and transition services that are available. Come on in. We already started, but make yourselves at home. Just sit down. Your election clerks. So these are your within your city or your town. Election clerks are really important. They're the ones who really protect the rights of people who are voting, and often are making those accommodations for you at the polling places. They're the people that if you go to a polling place and you find out it's not accessible, you're going to call your election clerk and you're going to say, hey, this is a problem, or your election clerk may be in the polling place and you want to talk about that. Municipal clerks. Yes. So there's like the people who are at the polling place. There are the people who are at the city hall or the town hall or the So always good to know who your election officials are in your community. We many years ago did like polling site reviews. And those election clerks are really important because they're the ones who make sure that things, if they're not accessible, become accessible. Your housing authorities. So every local community has their own housing authority, and they often deal with low income housing, sometimes called Section 8, also affordable housing, Section 42. And so often you might be advocating for them for changes within your community, maybe bringing more low income or affordable housing to your community, making sure that units are accessible, that units are safe, units are clean. We often hear about that. I know in Milwaukee right now, they're having quite a big issue around their local housing authority, and lots of people came out to complain about it very recently. Your planning commissions. So those are the people who approve different things that are happening in your community. It could be an accessible park. It could be a new housing development. It could be roads. It can be possibly different transportation options. So another place that you can get involved in your local planning commission. And sometimes they have committees that people can sit on. A lot of these things might have committees. School boards often have, school districts often have different committees that people can sit on. Planning commissions sometimes have local people coming to work with them. Then we have our county boards. So not just our cities and towns, but we have our county boards and county staff. They are in charge of a lot of services and support. So when we think about our counties, we think about children's long-term support, mental health services. This is where our aging and disability resources are, which are the entry for adult long-term care, transportation and planning, adult protective services, which protects people with disabilities and older adults from abuse and neglect. Our county parks. So when we were talking about accessible parks. Then we also have cities, villages, and towns. And so again, you have a mayor, you may have a village board or your alder people. All of those people are making decisions about your life. And then our circuit courts. So often in our communities, circuit courts are making decisions related to different ideas that are important to people with disabilities. I think of in my community in Waukesha, we had the case on being able to have someone else drop off your ballot. So that was a circuit court in my community that ruled that someone else could not drop off your ballot. So pretty important to think about our circuit courts. For kids, this can often be a place where maybe they're entering what we call the school to prison pipeline. So good to know who are your judges and court officials in your local community. You can have somebody deliver your ballot. You can. It is considered an accommodation, and Jenny helps run the Disability Vote Coalition. So you can have somebody drop off your ballot, but that was a decision that came out of the circuit court in Waukesha County. So pretty important to understand that your courts are also very important to the lives of yourself and your family members. All right, community event organizers. So often we have people who are thinking about different walks, different ways that they're going to welcome people into their communities. I often think of maybe like the Lions Club or the Kiwanis, or so there are lots of different community organizations. We might have like shelters or food pantries. All of those need to be thinking about how they are able to welcome people with disabilities into those different organizations. And then our Chamber of Commerce. So often our communities have a Chamber of Commerce. And so these are businesses. And, you know, this is a really great place for people to engage around employment. So, because often our Chamber of Commerce is made up of, you know, the businesses in our community. That's usually a great place that they want to say they're part of a chamber. And so being able to educate all of those businesses about employing people with disabilities, very important. All right, so we are going to look at some of the ways to find your local decision makers. So I'm sorry, I'm just fumbling a little because I don't have my glasses. All right, so there are ways for you to find find your local decision makers, and we will do an activity to help you find those decision makers. So so I'm just gonna go through them, and then we're gonna show you the different websites. So first there is the My Vote. So that allows you to find your municipal clerk, or sometimes city clerk, or right? That's just what they call it, municipal clerk. Okay. And that is the person who does manage the elections in your town, city, whatever it might be. You are often able to find your county board. So who is your county executive? Who are the people who sit on the county board? They are the ones who are managing those county budgets. So they will hold budget hearings. You can access the information about the budget. You can see who represents your town or city from the county perspective. Again, those important things: children's long-term care, mental health services, aging and disability resource center, transportation, all great examples. City and town government. So again, public transportation, improvements to roads, zoning, which could be the different housing options, ordinances that come about that may affect people with disabilities, your school board, and then last but certainly not least is your state and your state representative and senator. And so in our state, everybody has a state rep and a state senator, and those are the people who represent your area where you live. So really important to get to know who they are. They are concerned about local concerns, but their job is mainly to look at what is Wisconsin overall going to spend our money on, and then also they are the ones who make up the different laws in our state. So pretty important. And knowing, it's good to know all aspects of who are the policymakers or decision makers. All right, so this is the My Vote website. So it's pretty simple. This is where you can request your absentee ballot. You can find out where you vote. So if you click, oh God, My Voter Information. So right up here, right up there, that is where everything will come up. And I don't know if I can click this or not. What do you think, Jenny? Okay, good. Okay. Tammy didn't build it as a, okay. So that's where you can find your municipal clerk. All right. All right. So this is a sample of a county. So this is Douglas County. And you can see Tammy has the arrows pointing to the directory, and then you can see the County Board of Supervisors. So if you were to click on that, you would get the board members. I think the other interesting thing is the different committees. So because sometimes they do ask people from the community to maybe do work on a committee or a work group, depending on the meeting calendar. Very important. If there's an issue that you're interested in, you can click on that and you can go and attend. I remember not too many years ago, there were some a lot of housing issues, I think, come to the community. And so I know very recently in Brookfield, they were wanting to build some affordable housing. And a lot of families came out of people with disabilities because Brookfield had no affordable housing, not one single unit of affordable housing, which I used to live in Brookfield. I was not surprised. But again, people came out to say, you know, there are lots of people with disabilities who grew up in this community and want to live in this community in an apartment. And so you need to think about this. And, you know, pretty simple. They just came to one of the planning meetings and gave their thoughts on why Brookfield needed affordable housing. This is another one, La Crosse. So this is not a county, this is a city. So you can see it has all the boards and committees, who's this on the city council, who the mayor might be. When you look at the city council, you usually are able to tell what area they're representing. I think if we were to click on it, there's usually like a map. So sometimes it's a little, you got to figure out where your neighborhood is and which area you might be in of who represents you. All right. This is the Appleton Area School District webpage. Again, this is looking at their Board of Education. And so you can click on and find out who all the board members are. These pages usually now everything's all, you know, there used to be the days where you had to go in person for everything. If you want to talk about a topic, you still have to go in person. But you can look at all the board documents. You can find out any of the agenda and minutes. What is the board working on? So just really good to familiarize yourself. I think school boards in particular, you know, a lot of times we might know somebody on the school board that is a, you know, they're just a person like you or I who decided they wanted to be on the school board in our cities and towns too. You'd be surprised. Like, I know quite a few people on school boards. So, so again, just another place that you can give your input. All right. And then this is the Wisconsin State Legislature page. And so they make it pretty big here so you can see. So it says, who are my legislators? And then all you do is you enter your address and you click that find your legislator button, and that will give you your 2 legislators. So it's pretty slick. And then you can go right into their website to get all of their contact information. It'll give you all of their staffers' names, everything. So it's really pretty simple to figure out who your legislators are. And again, this is for our state. So you have 1 state senator and 1 state representative. Oh, yes, at the top there. Right. So at the top, you'll see home, Senate, Assembly committees. So you can click on any of the committees. So if you're interested to see, well, you can go to your legislators page and then you can see what committees they're on. But also you can always click on a committee if you're interested in a particular topic. So like there's a committee on education in both the Senate and the Assembly. There's a long-term care committee. So you can also check out who might be on those committees, and you might be able to see whether your legislator or not is on that committee. All right. Any questions so far about that before we kind of move on to this activity we're going to do? Questions, comments? Yes, hang on. I'm going to come to you with the mic.
I was just going to say that I use the Wisconsin State Legislature website all the time to look up the numbers because I can never remember them. So I use it all the time.
Yes, for sure. Absolutely. It is a really useful page. And once you learn how to do it, it doesn't change very much. So it really has remained the same over many years. So it's not one of those where, you know, you look at it 1 year and then you go back in a year later and you're like, oh God, I can't find anything. So we know that happens quite a bit, but that website does really remain quite quite similar over the course of time. Hi. All right, so we're gonna do an activity. So just a raise of hands, who has a cell phone or a laptop? We're just trying to see who's gonna need some help. I mean, we'll help everybody. Okay, so I have one laptop. I can't seem to get into the other laptop. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna have you kind of do what we just showed you. Look for your pick 2 out of the 5 that you want to find. So a municipal clerk, county board, city or town government, and we have sheets for you. So school board, and state legislators. So pick 2 of those that you're interested in finding. We'll give you the sheet and we'll help you. And then think about, and we'll kind of do a share back. Think about, did you know anyone who was listed? Like you might, especially school board. I always think people know somebody on the school board. Or what did you learn by looking at the site? What maybe did you learn that was interesting to you by looking at the site? Okay. For anyone who came in late, the slides are on the table. So we're happy to kind of explain a little bit more. And I think we said, how much time are we doing? Oh my God, who's got the agenda? Jenny. What did we say? 20 minutes. We think we're going to do 20 minutes. If it's less, we'll tell you. Okay. So, and anybody who needs help, raise your hands. We'll walk around and help you out. Oh, it's 20 and then 10-minute share out. Do you think? Okay. So it's 20 minutes to look for them. And then we'll do some share out in the last 10 minutes. All right. I think we're gonna get started and I'll finish up the feedback and then I'll turn it back over to Tammy. All right. So we are going to hear from a couple of you. We're interested to know, did you know anyone? And what did you learn by looking at the site? Who wants to start us off? Who wants to share? All right. I love a first sharer because I'm a first sharer.
I don't know if okay, good. I guess I'm usually so loud. So I was looking at my town board and went to the committees and discovered my neighbor who I talk to all the time is on the planning commission. No idea. No.
Yeah, that's a pretty big deal, right? So like planning commission, housing, can be your roads. So it could be your transportation, lots of different things for sure. All right. Yep.
Okay, so I'm deaf, obviously, and I'm using a sign language interpreter. So I was looking at the state of Wisconsin, the senators, and I live in Madison, not too far away from here, Monona. So it's really important to know the different lines because there's so much complications in between, like the lines of where people live and who's the representative. So sometimes referring out or sending out information to the legislature, it could become somewhat of an issue just because the lines are drawn so weird.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, especially when you live in a big city. So you might think, oh, this is my legislator, but unless you go on that website and actually look, you might be thinking of the wrong person and you might be communicating with them. So, hopefully they would tell you, oh, but you might not be saying what your address is. So they might not know. that you live in a different, you live one street over and you're in so-and-so's area. So very important to check on that. And I think a lot of times people, you might hear legislators' names and you think, oh, that's my legislator. I mean, it just sometimes is when we don't understand necessarily about the state legislator, sometimes we hear lots of people's names like Robin Voss. So maybe everybody thinks Robin Voss is their representative because we hear about him the most. All right, who else would like to share?
I am familiar with my municipal clerk, city government, and school board thanks to a privilege that was granted to me that many other disabled people don't have. And I'm lucky that there are trainings like this for people with disabilities that did not have an opportunity my home community gave me.
Thank you for sharing. All right, who else? Who else wants to? All right, I'm coming over there. This is good. I'm going to get in all my steps today. I bet I've already walked 5,000 steps today.
Okay, I looked up my municipal clerk because I had no idea who that was. I live in Fond du Lac. So I don't go to a polling place when I go to vote. I go to my local county government center. Because I moved about 2 years ago, so I didn't know where to go vote. And they just told me that I could come to the county government center to vote just to make it easy for me. And we talked about, privacy. So when I go to the county center to go vote, it's not like I go into an individual voting booth. So I get pulled to a side, like in the corner of the building, and a policeman stands right there to make sure nobody is trying to see who I'm voting for.
That's great. And that clerk could tell you every time you move, they could tell you where your new polling place is,
It's
Sure.
She gives me like an absentee ballot. So that way I don't have to worry about where I need to go to vote. She said they're always there to help.
I think that's good to know. And we always forget that our municipal clerks do go out of their way to make sure that people can vote. So we should always thank them. So good story. I love it. All right. Who else? Anybody else? Okay.
My city town government is Ted Cushing and Bill Fried. And school board, Christy Seidel and Jay.
Good luck.
Crystal, I think, Crystal. You don't want to say
We think it's Chris Sau. And maybe you want to add that what you knew about those people.
we worked on transportation in our town for a long time before we got it, but we don't have enough right now. We need to have weekends also. So we're still working.
And you said you knew the Billy.
And Billy Fried.
Yeah.
And the other two, I'm not positive.
Yeah, but the one, and then we could see that the one was actually on the like a transportation type committee. So yes.
I take the public transport when I coming back from work. I work at Triggs, but they will not pick me up for work.
I think that was the interesting thing too, because I did sit down with this lovely pair. They live in a small community. So especially for the transportation, the discussion was kind of that maybe that is county government because they want to go from one municipality to the other. So, all right. One more, and then I'm going to turn it back over to Tammy because now I'll be the clock keeper, but we're only 1 minute over.
I actually have been fortunate enough to know that my representative is Samba Balde. I am currently working with one of his staffers on an issue that's important to me. I am also closely working with Senator Melissa Agard as well. So.
Yep. So Brett has gotten to know his legislators, which is very important. All right, I'm going to turn it back over to Tammy. Or not, back over to start.
How many of you found that to be really easy? Looking up all that stuff. How many of you knew that you had probably 5 websites to go to figure out who your local and your county and your state representatives and your voting clerk were? Everybody knew that? Y'all frequent those frequently? Oh, I know that guy. He does a lot of technology stuff too. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's an exercise that's helpful because you forget how many layers of people there are that have a touch point on disability issues. And even if you're not in public school right now, that school board is still making decisions about how your schools within your districts operate. The town boards, they do a lot of potholes and other things. County government does a whole bunch of stuff that most people don't know they do, but touches your life in lots of ways, including transportation programs. And the biggest piece is familiarize yourself with how to look this stuff up, because sometimes you end up with people who are in the same positions for years, and you can develop relationships with them and be an expert on disability stuff for them. And sometimes those people change. They aren't always the same. Jenny does a lot of election work, and if you get a chance to have a conversation with Jenny at the conference, she'll probably tell you how important elections are, because they change the people who you just looked up sometimes. County board, town board, municipal clerks, those are all elected positions. School boards are elected positions. These are all citizens who are running for these offices to get elected. And not to put a plug in it, but Sally Flashberger, who does Partners in Policymaking, we've had several people who went through Partners who have run and won school board seats. So, or other seats. So there's nothing saying you can't do that too. The other important role that you can play, many of you may be involved in some sort of state program, and you may not realize that you're involved with a state program. But if you're in family care, or you're in IRIS, or you have used DVR services or the children's long-term support programs, these are programs that are run at the state level, and sometimes they work really well for people, and sometimes they could work better. So it's also important for you to use your voices to communicate with the people you're interacting with on what is and isn't working for you. I just had a really nice conversation about forms and website accessibility with the table in the back. And lots of times, even the people who work with folks with disabilities don't necessarily see things through a disability perspective because they don't have the same lived experience. So, you know, if you are experiencing vision loss and your program tells you to go to the website to solve all your problems, and the website is in fact not accessible for people with vision loss, that is an example of something that you could very easily say, this doesn't work for me and why. And you may get a resounding amount of silence when you say that, or you may get somebody who says, we've never thought about that, even though you and I know they should have, right? Like there's a lot of times when things that seem very obvious to us, because we live with disability and work with people closely all the time, they aren't necessarily obvious to people who work in these programs and maybe are new to the program or don't have that lived experience. Some of you may be very experienced people in state programs and have perhaps offered feedback before. And for those of you who have been in programs for a long time, you might know that you have to keep saying the same thing over and over, and sometimes to different people. Am I right on this? Yeah.
Just real quick, I'll let I people from like that went to family care when it shifted from family care to the county waiver, from the county waiver system into family care. I was within the first 200 people from Fond du Lac County that went into family care. So there were a lot of bumps in the road early. I had the very distinct honor of meeting with the governor at that time, Tommy Thompson, for like 10 minutes. He wanted to know how the program was working for me. And I told him about the stuff that wasn't working. And he said, we'll go back to the state legislature and we'll start to work on getting these changes made.
You never should underestimate, always take the opportunity to say something, because you're not going to lose, right? There's no losing if you raise an issue. It's not being solved now. So if you say silent, still not going to get solved, right? If you say something, it might get solved, or it might, you never know what's going to be the rock that kind of starts the landslide going towards change. So you never lose when you say what's real.
I felt not that I felt inadequate, but I'm just a normal person. And for the governor to want to spend 10 minutes with me, I was extremely honored, because I'm just a regular person. But he said, Todd, this program is very early, so if we don't hear back from people like you that are in the program, we're not going to know what's working and not working, so that we can make the changes that we need so that you get the help that you need. So again, I was very honored that he took that time.
And 10 minutes with Tommy was a lot of time. He probably listened a lot. But you're raising a good point. Sometimes when we don't say something, a lot of our decision makers don't actually hear from real people, and they like to hear from real people because they don't like, how would you like to be handed? Here's a mess of decisions you have to make. And you don't really know what the right ones are. Like, it is helpful to decision makers to hear pros and cons, and from people who are directly impacted. And you are those voices. And sometimes they don't know who to seek out. And so you have to kind of raise your hand and be the person who's volunteering to step forward and say something. So we've just kind of given a few things that we, in our experience, feel like are important, categories for state agencies to hear about. We spend a lot of time trying to help people understand various letters or manuals or, information that's coming to people about programs. And it's really helpful for them to understand what the person who receives that information actually takes away from it. We talk a lot about plain language in our organization. Most of the time, programs are not necessarily designed to be in a way to be easy to understand for the people who are using them. So that's a great point for you to kind of help them know what it's like to be the receiver of that information and what you actually take away from it. What makes things hard? What would make them easier? And more importantly, if the person you're interacting with isn't the right person to hear the feedback, ask them who is, because there's no reason that if you can't say something once, you can't say it again to a different person, if that's the right person.
So an activity here, which we're going to do an activity here, which I'm not very clear about, but we go back to the other slide. We're going to do an activity, and then we're going to take a break. and then we'll come back and work on the next activity. So we had kind of decided, I think, that we wanted to hear from you. We wanted you to think about, was there something in your life that a state agency, or even, I think really anyone, about giving your feedback about maybe a program that you're using, or so we wanted to give you some time to think about that. And then we wanted to hear from people your thoughts about that. I'm just wondering if we have anybody who has any examples. So right now, where they've shared their feedback with the state agency. So I think if we kind of give you some examples to have you think about. So let's hear from.
So mine is in relation to how they make decisions on things that I asked for. I'm in the family care program. I live in an apartment building that doesn't supply their own air conditioners. And due to the nature of my disability, I need to have a consistent regulation in temperature as much as possible. And family care didn't want to give it to me. And I got all the medical documentation from my doctor, physical therapist, anybody that could influence their decision. And I also wrote my own letter. The biggest thing I would like to see is if there's anything that you're asking for that is potentially covered by state dollars, instead of making us fight and going through appeals because they want to say no, if you have medical documentation to back up your need, I would like it if the process was different. Now, I'm not here to expecting any of us to do that, but I am saying, I know so many people who have lost hours or services, and it's just a matter of getting the documentation. But putting everybody through that because the state just wants us to say no and give up because we say, oh, they said no. But then they realize if you're a fighter and you don't give up, they're going to give you what you're asking for, which is frustrating, but also kind of rewarding when you win because, I did get it.
I think that was an excellent example because there were a couple things you had to do. First, you had to understand why they were saying no. You had to deal with family care, but then you're talking about, we need to make a change at the state to make it easier, not just for you, right? And to really look at that. So that was such a great example. I swear I did not prep him ahead of time. So
so many people struggle with that whole process of asking for a service, getting denied, the state hoping you don't fight for it, and then them just winning. But when they realize you're gonna fight for it and you're gonna go all the way to the appeal, they're like, wait a minute, maybe we don't want to pay for this appeal judge and all this. Maybe we'll just say yes. So it gives a reminder to all of us in this room, never give up on what you truly believe you need, because if you really need it, you'll get it.
So that's kind of what we're talking about. We want you to take a couple minutes and think about what in your life are you trying to change that maybe a state agency is responsible for, or even your your MCO or something like that, or children's long-term care. So take a few minutes and jot down some ideas, and then maybe you haven't taken all the steps that Chad has. And so think about, what do you need to do? Why is this so hard? Maybe you're stuck somewhere in a certain, you haven't been able to get what you need and you're kind of stuck. And then we'll give everybody a little bit of time to think about that, and then we'll hear from some of you. Okay, sounds good. Okay. Does that, so I think these questions will give you a few prompts. So we'll give you about 5 minutes to do that, and then we'll hear from a couple people. And let us know if it's not clear, because I don't think it was clear to us. Do we have anyone who's going to need CEUs in this room? Yes. Yes. There. Yes. Okay. 2. Got it. Patty has that. We're not done yet. We're not. Ho, Patty. We're not done. When you come back after break, we'll give them to you. All right. Let's see. I'm gonna keep us on time. So I know Brett has an example of how he has been working with the state agency. So you guys keep talking, but I'm gonna give Brett an opportunity first.
So I've been similar to Chad, but I have been working over the last year in the family care program to get some of my caregiving hours returned to me that were wrongfully taken from me. And I did in fact get them back, which allows me to exercise and be able to do things on a much more consistent basis. So not only that helps my body and my legs and everything to keep them moving. So just remember to like Chad said, if you have something that you believe in, don't ever give up, because you will get there. It took me about a year to get the right documentation and the right what they were asking me for to have all my ducks in order. But yeah, don't ever give up for what you believe in.
I think too, what Brett's saying too, is it took them a while to learn what exactly they wanted from them. And so we should be asking our system, like, why can't we make it easier? Just tell us what you need and we'll get it. We'll help you out. We'll give you the things you need. All right. Anybody else want to give an example of working with maybe a state agency, or how you would go about it if you haven't?
There are 2 big things. A couple of years, well, probably more than a couple, when we had Governor Walker and he wanted to make cuts to family care. I don't know if anybody remembers all the state hearings that they had. I went to one of the state hearings. I was asked by Lakeland if I would help speak and fight for family care. And I guess the thing that frustrates me most, when you are disabled and they start a system or a program and it's working, they always want to change it. And I'm one of those people that says, if the wheel isn't broken, don't mess with it. That doesn't mean I'm not looking for improvements. You always need to look at a program to see how you can make it better, but don't go backwards. And I get frustrated with state and even US government when they want to make cuts or take stuff away that works for us. I just think it's wrong. I would like some of those state legislatures to spend maybe a week in a wheelchair, or have something that they take for granted and have them sit in our shoes for maybe a week, or even if they could do it for a couple of days, it might open their eyes. Yeah. Because we had some people that did that where I work. they had our managers do it. And after they spent maybe 1 or 2 days doing the things that I have to do on a daily basis, which is not, I don't mean to say no big deal, but I'm used to it. So I've learned to work with it. I've had people come up to me and say, how can you, I don't know how you do that day in and day out. And I just tell them, I don't know any different. This is the way I've been. And so, but yeah, I get frustrated when people want to make changes to stuff that works.
I think that's an important message too, because we've been talking about telling stories to our state, helping our state agencies tell better stories. And so it's good to tell your legislator, and we'll get into that after the break, but it's also good for state agencies to know that they have stories they can use, because they're really good about data, but they're not good about necessarily telling those personal stories. All right. Any other, hang on, I'm just looking for people who maybe haven't had a chance today. Any other? Okay, I'll come over here.
So the privilege I mentioned earlier was that I was given the honor to return to my former high school after aging out of education as an athletic volunteer. And that gave me a pedestal where I was told what the school board members were and what local legislators were. And the biggest struggle, though, that I have with those individuals is when a bad apple or a delinquent or a hardened bad villain does some egregious thing in a community area, and suddenly blanket rules are now passed that hurt people with disabilities who have been doing things safely, and now we're told, oh, you can't do this as a school volunteer because of these hardened bad guys. And the fact that a lot of agencies they get so scared because of people, some of which who deserve being locked up. They're bad people. And now good people who've been safe for years with disabilities have to suffer. So that's my biggest challenge.
I think that's a really good point. State agencies sometimes make decisions based on a few and not many.
So I'm going to summarize, and then I'm going to summarize a couple of things that we've heard today. One is no means no until it's a yes, right? That's right. And sometimes what the questions that you ask are, well, what documentation do you need? You know, write down. People with disabilities are masters at life administration, right? Like, so you have your notepad, you date it, you put down who you've talked to, and you ask them, what do you need? And you can refer back to that. And, you know, you keep grinding away at it. Your examples were good because you shouldn't have to do any of those things, right? Like, you successfully advocated to a yes, but it was hard to do so. And the feedback to the agency is it shouldn't be this hard, because there's always somebody who doesn't have the resource or the ability to navigate in the same way, and they lose. Or the motive. Well, it is very stressful. And I think I always struggle when I'm talking with legislators to explain that mental load, like that the amount of time that you are thinking about things that other people never think about is high. And I think I don't have a great way of expressing what that means, but you probably do, right? And I think that's important feedback for systems to hear, is that when they think they have an easy process, and it really is multiple phone calls. A ridiculous example on my part, I ordered a lawnmower for my mother because older adult care is real. And it was missing a mulch cover. It didn't come in the package. She heard the 7th of the phone calls I had to do. Literally, it took me 7 calls where I was waiting. And it was the simplest thing ever. It's a plastic part, people. But it literally took 2 months and multiple phone calls to fix. And the system doesn't think that that's a problem, but it is a problem for for somebody like you or me or somebody who has to deal with it. And that's a relatively, now times that times 100, right? Oh, okay. I think do you want to go with that now? There was one other thing I was going to say. Okay. So no means no until it means yes. Feedback on what's working, what not to touch, is as important as feedback on what could be improved, right? And if you stay silent, nothing's ever going to change because everybody assumes that no complaints means everything's fine. Right. One last thing, and then we'll get to the online comments. Who here can get, what is the largest minority population in this country? Does anybody know? You are correct. People with disabilities are the largest minority group in this country, almost 25% of us, because by age or circumstance of birth or injury or accident, it is statistically likely the longer you are on this planet that you will acquire a disability. Okay? You are the largest minority population in this country. Is this world built for you? I ask, you're laughing, but the reality is, if we thought about accommodating the largest the minority population we have, our world would be designed differently. And you are the people who know how the world should work. Okay?
Sure.
State government is more friendly or receptive, or might have the resources to go get what they need to make things, I wouldn't say exactly the way we want it, but better for us.
Yeah. Right. Okay. I'm just gonna, Larry's got a comment online and then we'll take a break. So Larry said that EVV is a great example of misspending dollars based on minority of bad actors. Like the other speaker said, the majority of people with disabilities suffer consequences such as lack of workforce and much money. Hang on, I can't get my, yes. Yeah, approve better services and pay providers what they are worth. Let's get our priorities straight. All right, thanks, Larry. EVV is our electronic verification system in family care and IRIS for workers to be sure that they're doing their work. So, all right, so we're going to take a break. Let's take a break until 2:35. 2:35. That gives you just a little under 15 minutes. All right. So come back at 2:35 and we're going to get started with elevator speeches. This is our favorite. All right. I'm going to get us focused and give this back to Tammy to get us started on our next part of the presentation.
Are you feeling focused now that Sally has told you to get back and be focused? We had a mint. We're ready. We're ready. So all of you are going to get some hands-on experience thinking about advocating on a specific issue you care about. Local disability advocates are critical. That is absolutely true. Nothing happens with, things can either happen to you or they can happen because you ask them to. And we're going to practice a very important skill that I think is undervalued. You have expertise. You don't need to have a PhD to be able to understand the world around you and how you interact with it. So maybe some of you do have PhDs, in which case you are an expert in a specific item, but maybe not everything, right? And I want you to think about your expertise being your, how you as a person with a disability find it is to engage with the world and how easy or hard that can be. Lived experience is real experience. And decision makers really need to hear from people who actually live what you live. Like Tommy Thompson. You were probably the most exciting person he talked to that day because you weren't a lobbyist. You weren't going to get paid more dollars or less dollars based on what you said. You weren't somebody who was worried about whether or not they were going to get in trouble if something did or didn't work.
When family care was first developed, Tommy Thompson made it, I don't know if I'd call it a mission, that's what I'll call it. He went to the original 5 pilot counties. After family care was going for maybe, I'm going to say about 6 months, and he made stops to the individual care organizations and said, I want to talk to people that are in family care. And he also talked to staff, but he said, I want to talk to people that are using the program. And I need to find out what works and what doesn't work. And I was saying to someone during the break that when I talk to, I'll probably never get to talk to a governor again, but if I get the opportunity to talk to a state legislature person, I always think to myself, it's a good idea if I can tell them a couple of positive things that are working before I start talking to them about what I don't like. Because I think if we always talk about the negative, and I'm not saying we shouldn't, we should all fight for what we want. But it's been my experience that if we can give someone with power or decision making, if you give them just a little bit of positive feedback, like this is working for us, they'll be more receptive, more open to making some changes.
So we're getting into a little bit of a lead in on how to do an elevator speech. Okay. Decision makers hear what's real. It can be real that you have good things that are happening in your life, right? And we should emphasize that. It's also real that things could be easier. And the reason why your voice is so important, many people who end up in a position where they are making policy decisions, either at the local level, school board, county board, or legislature, and often people who get elected to local government offices end up getting elected to higher offices, like in the state legislature. You may be the person that is introducing them to disability issues. And we have a lot of issues. So if you're involved in disability work, there's a lens that you can provide on schools, on transportation, on long-term care, on health care. Pretty much every system touches you in a different way when you have a disability. And people who are elected to office are coming with their own background and experiences. They're valid, but they aren't your background and experiences. So you are a resource for them as they try to learn how does a policy benefit or not benefit the state as a whole, but also a specific group of people. You are also providing a very important role of reminding your decision makers that you are here. Remember, you are not surprised that people with disabilities are the largest minority in the country. Most elected officials would be, right? We have designed a world in which we are not thinking about people who have the hardest time accessing that world first. Think about it. How easy is it if you don't drive a car? Awful. Yes. How easy is it to get in and out of buildings 30 years after the Americans with Disabilities Act? Can you book a hotel if you need a roll-in shower and be clear that it will actually be a shower you can roll into? Yeah, good luck. Can you go down the sidewalk and be assured that there are curb cuts for you? Can I stop you? No.
Or places claiming they're accessible, like hotel rooms, saying we put grab bars in the bathroom and that's good enough. The space doesn't matter. I've seen a lot of that.
That's right. So, and that's a great example, because there are lots of well-meaning people who feel like they've done things for people with disabilities to make things accessible that are actually really not helpful at all, or maybe harmful.
Because they're not actually
Right. Or recognizing that there is diversity within disability, right? Grab bars might be very useful if you have just small balance issues. They're not really that useful for somebody in a power wheelchair usually. So you are reminding your officials that you're here and that you are an important part of their constituency. And even if it's only you, reminding them that there are many, many people like you who are not talking to them at that moment is a very important role. People remember stories. They will remember what you tell them about your lives and your experiences. I can present statistics all day. Some of them are even interesting. But what they will remember is the sentence or two from you that puts into perspective what that statistic means. What does it mean if I got secluded and restrained as a student in high school? Right? What did that feel like? What did that mean for me in my life and what I remember and how I think about things? That is more important. And when there are enough of you who are saying the similar things, it makes an impression. If I hear about there are laws that exist on the books because one person said something, right? Sometimes there is like you said, there's a single bad actor who creates who is the reason a policy that exists that didn't exist before. But sometimes there's one individual who says, hey, this is a problem. A legislator says, yeah, it is. And the whole law gets changed so that lots of people benefit from it too. So both those things are true at the same time. And we want you to be the person who is going to be the one saying, hey, here's the problem. And I think I have a solution, and then getting the ball rolling so things get better for everyone. So I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but I kind of feel like these three priorities are things we hear about all the time. And maybe they are similar to some of the concerns that you have. Too few paid caregivers. There's no help for unpaid family caregivers. Special education quality or school choice equity. Transportation. I've heard some comments already about transportation being a problem. If you are concerned about any or all of these things, you are not alone. These are the things we hear about all the time. And you may have other concerns that are not on this list. That is also okay. But if you were struggling for ideas, here are some that we know impact a lot of people with disabilities. And what we're going to do this afternoon is you're going to practice and prepare and deliver what's called an elevator speech. Okay. An elevator speech, something you can use with any of the local officials that you just identified, right? Maybe you probably want to stick to voting issues if you're talking with your municipal clerk, maybe or maybe not, but lots of the local decision makers you identified may be able to make decisions on a host of issues that are important to you. And an elevator speech is a quick introduction to you, where you establish your credibility, your connection to them, and then a little bit about why you're talking with them, what you want them to remember. So what is an elevator speech? It usually includes a few core components. Important to say your name, first and last name. That's how we identify people in this culture, is names. Important to identify where you live. That's an important piece, because for a lot of elected officials, they're trying to figure out, are you a constituent of theirs or not? Elected officials represent an area, a geographic area, and all the people that live within that geographic area. So if you live within those bounds of their district, you are a constituent. You are a person who can choose to vote for them or not. And you become more important, right? Complaining to, say, a county board official who doesn't do business in the county you live in doesn't do you a lot of good, because your county board in the county you live in is responsible for making decisions in your local area, right? So you want to make sure that when you're talking to somebody, they understand you're somebody that they should be concerned about, because you live where they do. You are bringing to them things that are happening in their community. And if you're saying something, probably other people might feel the same way about it, who also live in their communities. So you can also say your connection to disability, right? For some people, that connection, there may be a visually, oh, you're a person with a disability, but there are a lot of connections to disability that aren't necessarily obvious unless you say so. So if you are a family caregiver, if you are a sibling to a person with a disability, if you have an invisible disability, you may or may not want to disclose your disability status, but you certainly want to say, hey, I'm connected to disability, and there are a few things that I really want to bring to your attention. It may be through volunteer work, or you may be a provider, work with people with disabilities, or be a professional. There's lots of ways that people are connected to disability. The important point is that you are saying what that is. Okay. That establishes your credibility. And then you want a brief 1 to 2 sentence story about yourself that kind of says, here's the issue I'm interested in and why. Okay. It sounds really easy. It's hard to write short. And then the last thing you have, maybe 1 sentence, is an ask. Support for what? Support for a policy that exists. Support for, hey, I'd like to talk to you about this issue further. Hey, I'd like to invite you to my hometown or this event so you can meet more people with disabilities who are sharing the same experience. There are lots of different asks, but it's important that you have one. Otherwise, you're just spending 30 seconds of their time and they go away and they never reconnect with you, right? So that's it. Pretty much a sentence, your name, where you live, and your connection to disability, a couple of sentences that really succinctly puts in perspective the issue you care about and your personal experience with it. And then another sentence about asks. Okay. We have a few tips here, and you're going to do this in a few minutes. So don't think you're not getting off the hook. All right. Think about and write down, what are you trying to talk about? What is the story that you're trying to tell? What's the message you want legislators to remember? When I do a PowerPoint, these are the points that if somebody isn't listening to me and they want to read later, they can refer back to. But oftentimes people listen to what I say and they remember a single phrase or a sentence that isn't on those slides. That's what you want. When somebody walks away from you, you want them to remember a single phrase, right? Oh, this is Zach, who is this, and this is what I remember. And you want it to be powerful, okay? Use plain language. I mean, all of us write smarter than we are, right? We all use bigger words when we don't have to. all decision makers are real people like you, and everybody benefits from plain language, and you don't have to worry about, dressing it up for folks. Saying something simply and articulately and plainly is very important. And it's actually easier for our population to do because we spend so much time repeating ourselves that we get really good at it, right? And we're going to practice in small groups. So that's what we're going to do next. You're going to pick a priority. I have 3 of them listed here. You are not confined to those, but we figured that those might be issues that you all have something to say about. So pick one of them or something else. And then amongst your table, I want you to use the sheets that we have handed out. There's one for each person. That's your note-taking devices. And you're going to create an elevator speech. All right. So you're going to have about half an hour.
Yes, they're gonna have 30 minutes. Do we want a share out? So 20 minutes.
So here's what we're going to do. You're
I think we're gonna pick maybe 1 or 2.
Yes, what we're going to do is you got 10 minutes to get your speech done. Okay. And then you're going to have another 10 minutes to practice your speech amongst the people on your table. People at the table, feel free to give feedback on other speeches. What do you remember? What was good? What did you want more information on? And after that, we're going to pick a couple of people to share out. Maybe folks that haven't shared before. Okay.
Jenny and I are gonna do a little role play. Jenny and I are gonna do a little role play so you can see what we're talking about. All right, ready? All right. Oh, hi, Senator Newgard. How are you today? Oh, my name's Sally Flashberger and I live in Waukesha, and I'm really glad I ran into you today. My son is a young man with a disability and he works in Milwaukee, but we live in Waukesha. And so I have been working really hard to try to figure out how we can make this transportation go from Waukesha County to Milwaukee County. Right now, he takes a cab and it's $76 each way. And that really doesn't seem like a good solution. And his long-term care is paying for that. And so I was really interested to come and talk to you about more of this regional transportation that can go from county to county and make it more affordable for people and make it more affordable for our long-term care system. He uses a self-direction called Iris, but I'd be really interested to come to your office and talk to you more about this in depth. Would you have time to do that?
Absolutely. I have not heard of this problem before, but that sounds like a big problem that's probably affecting other people. Call my office. We'll set up a time.
All right, great. Nice to see you today. Thanks. So that is an example of what we're talking about. So that's what we want you to be thinking about at your tables and sharing with each other. Exactly. See how quick that was? I got right to it. Gave you my issues, where I lived, what my name was, all of that. Okay. And the sheets are on your table if you didn't see them. You got about a minute. Are you guys ready to share at your tables? It sounds like you're already sharing. So, kind of how Jenny and I did it. Somebody just take an opportunity and say, you're going to go first. I don't know, identify somebody else at your table who's your senator representative and go ahead and practice. And then we'll give you 10 minutes and then we'll have a couple of you do it for us. For the whole group. We might, as Felicia says, voluntold you. Let's see a raise of hands of people who might be ready. Well, have you had a chance to share at your table? We just want to make sure everybody's had a chance to share. Okay. You feel like you have? All right. So we'll start over here and I'll make you speak. You seem ready to. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to Emily. She's going to show us. Okay, well, I am Senator Flashberger. All right.
Okay. My name is Emily. I live in Madison. I do not drive due to my disability. I want an increase in the disability budget this upcoming year for mass transit.
Excellent. How much money do you think they need?
I think it's 75%.
A 75% increase? All right. All right. Do you use public transportation?
I do. I take the bus to work and to social events and to my mom's house. Yeah.
So how would funding impact your life? How would it change public transportation for you?
I would like there to be more more bus routes, and like some of the buses, for example, the 75 bus that goes to Epic, which is the bus that I take to work. I would like that bus to be every 15 minutes instead of every half an hour, because there are 55 people on that bus.
All right. Well, thank you very much for sharing that. Would you want to meet later to talk about it?
Yes, absolutely. Do you have time today?
I do not have time today. Okay, so I'm trying to help Emily make those connections. So her issue, she said her name, her issue was around transportation. I already knew what Emily's issue was. I wanted to get her to add a personal story. So why was transportation important to her? So I got her to tell me about work and those types of things. Now, a legislator's not going to ask you all the questions that I necessarily did. I was trying to make a little bit of a point. And then what that increased transportation might do for Emily. So she can get to work on time. She can get where she needs to go. So I was trying to make all of those connections for her. All right, I'm going to move on to the next table. Do you want to share? No. Okay. All right. How about somebody over here? Do you want to share? Okay. I'm going to hand it over to Felicia.
Hi, Senator Flashberger. My name is Felicia Claiborne. I am a statewide disability advocate, also a person with multiple disabilities. I am advocating for housing. Now, in Milwaukee, we know that it's a lot of affordable housing, but it's not accessible. And it's in areas that if a person gets off the bus or the van and they get robbed, then that's a problem. So instead of having a tragedy, let's have a triumph. And I want to contact you for see if we can work on something to have accessible, affordable housing in the city of Milwaukee and abroad.
Excellent. Why don't you call my office and we'll set up an appointment? All right. So did you see how Felicia, she introduced herself. She talked about the issue with the affordable housing. She kind of made those connections and then asked for an appointment. All right. Who wants to go over here? None of you? Oh, okay. How about, oh, I see your hand up. Ready?
Mr. Tiffany, I am a self-advocate. My name is Lisa Gilson from Minocqua, Wisconsin, and our area has very little housing for people with disabilities. Could you create a bill so rural areas could get more housing for people with disabilities? We also need to work on more on transportation for work, church, recreation, and also for weekends, doctor's appointments, dentists, and eye doctors. My goal is to live independently so I can get to work and from work and to my mom and to my mom's condo. And this means a lot to me. And I thank you for supporting me and for all the great and your support.
That was excellent. You introduced yourself. You talked about what your topic was. You talked about why it was important to you. You thanked him because that's always really important. Now, are you talking about Tom, Tiffany? Is that who you're thinking? So I just want to clarify this because it's always good for people to know. So he is now in the federal government. So he's in Washington. And so we also have our state people. So you could also go to one of your state legislators to talk to them about this issue. But that was excellent. Very, very good. Thank you. And I liked how you wrote in big letters, you want to live independently. Anybody at this table? Come on, take a chance. No? All right. All right. That's great. You can stand up.
No, I'll sit down.
I need
No.
the mic though, because they can't hear us on.
Oh, on the Zoom.
It's okay.
Hi, my name is Jamie Potter, and I'm an independent contractor. I actually contract with IBA Resources, who gets referrals from Division of Vocational Rehabilitation, or what we call it, DVR. And the individuals that come over to us are the ones that have a diagnostic disability. They decide whether they want to go to school or if they want to go to work. If they want to go to work, they come to us, and we help develop their ability to want to go to work, help them with resumes, cover letters, look for employers. We match skills and abilities with what they can do and what they want to do. And I'm going to tell you right now, it's really hard when you live in a city where the buses only travel from 6 in the morning till 6 at night, no Saturdays or Sundays, and there's certain parts of the town you can't get into. So it makes it a limited area where people can actually look for employment. I would really like to see getting together with the employment or the municipal counties, with the Schofield, with Rothschild, Cronenwetter, town of Rib Mountain, and see if we could all put together a plan to help better everybody in the community, not just one population or the other, but everyone. So thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
That was excellent. So obviously transportation is really making its way through this room today. All right. How about over here? Did you guys want, did you? Oh, I see you have a bunch of stuff written there. I'm going to make Jenny's going to do it. Come on, Jenny. Jenny, let's do it.
Okay. I'll talk in my soft voice.
Oh, I think transportation.
Oh, yeah, it's almost. Oh, I know. Sorry. I guess for me, my issues is public transportation, employment, education, independence living, affordable housing, and SSI limitations, which basically means having very little or not enough money to sustain ourselves, especially when we can only have a certain amount of money, like $2,000, which is really sad because we need more than that. We need way more, like at least 10,000, especially for emergencies and stuff. And they keep saying, if we go over our limit, they'll take away our money. Otherwise, we have to pay them back or give them back our money, and that's not fair. And I know this because this happened to me once or twice, on a paper. They told me to give them back my money after they gave it to me. And they've said I could make an appeal or request a waiver, which doesn't make much sense because I refuse to give them back my money. And my mom, she kind of agrees with that too. That's the biggest issues is transportation, employment, and independence living / affordable housing. Thanks, Sally.
I think that was great though, because Jenny, you told your personal story about how those income limits really have affected you. And you did talk a lot about a lot of issues just to start, but then you really did focus on one issue. So that's always the best is we all have more than one issue. We know that. So it's best if we can try to focus on one. But when you did start talking about your issue and your story, you really did focus on that one issue. So a round of applause for all of you. That was great. And I think we're going to do our panel next. I think Tammy will wrap up and then we'll do, well, I don't know. Go ahead and say whatever you want to say. We have about, oh, we do? Oh.
This was all highly planned. So just following on Jenny's comment, I just want to let you guys know, I was testifying in a public hearing this session, and Senator Fine, who represents the Fond du Lac area, was in the room, and I was testifying on the Able bill, and I said something about, just so you're aware, when you are a person with a disability, that means you have to be poor to qualify for such programs. And I talked about that asset limit, and I said to him, and that means when you have a $2,000 asset limit, that's often not enough for a first and last month rent deposit. And he started nodding, like those like details of people's lives. All of a sudden he got it. He went, whoa, that is not a lot of money. And we had a really good conversation in that hearing about it. So I'm going to get through these slides, and then we're going to have a panel, and then we'll come back to you. Okay. All right. All right. So you've now practiced. You have an elevator speech. You can keep practicing, keep refining. You'll get better at this. I promise you. Your task now is to establish yourself as a disability resource with all the folks that you've identified as having a touch point on disability issues, right? So you're going to make yourself a credible community member, stay where you live, make sure they know your constituent, share that story, and connect with those leaders and say, hey, I'm here. I'm a constituent of yours, and I can help connect you to disability issues and other people who share the same issues. Invest in these relationships. These folks are probably going to be in a decision-making capacity for some amount of time, or they'll move to a different decision-making capacity. Every time you interact with somebody, it's a step in building a relationship. Make sure it's a positive. I mean, that doesn't mean you always say what they want to hear. It doesn't mean that you agree with them, but make sure you're being respectful, because every interaction you have is either helping you gain more credibility or taking away. And you want to be the person that they come to with their questions. You also are going to be a good listener, because you're going to learn something about them. They'll probably tell you a lot more than they know. So a lot of folks are super honest in this state, and they will tell you all sorts of things, or you may be able to hear from their questions where they need more information, right? So being a good listener is a good way to kind of think about, oh, you were in 4-H, so was I. Like, you can figure out other ways to make connections, but you can also hear what questions they have that tell you where they need more information. And decision makers will ask questions. You don't have to have all the answers, but you can follow up with them at any time. After you've met with them or you've done an elevator speech, you can follow up with an email or a phone call, remind them of the interaction, provide more information. You don't have to know it all or all at the same time. They don't know it all either. Newsflash. Okay. Sometimes your decision maker won't agree with you for a variety of reasons. That opinion can change. Remember, no is no until it means yes, right? And you can ask for things. This doesn't have to be a nice conversation where you're just building a relationship. They're in a decision-making capacity because they've been elected to do that. That does mean that they're the people who are in charge of changing things. And if they don't want to change anything, well, I mean, there's another election you could run, right? So you can always ask for something. If it's from a state program, you can say, I need clearer communication, or this process is too complex, or I can't do this because I don't have an internet connection. You can always ask for something different. You can become a part of the decision-making process as well. Sometimes folks will ask, hey, do you want to be a member of the committee? If you do, and there's a way to virtually participate or something else, say how this is what I would need to be accommodated, but I'd love to provide information. You can be part of that process. All sorts of ways to ask for action and kind of insert yourself into this. All of you know this, since so many of you spend so many times repeating yourselves and asking for the same things from different people, right? That life administration stuff. Persistence is your job. And when you think about it as being your job, it gets a little bit easier to bear, right? It's like, here we are again, and I'm going to say the same thing again. And you're a different person, but you also need to hear it. And I understand it's frustrating, but it's your job because no one else is going to do it. It's really normal to have to repeat and remind others of your issues and your disability perspective. It's new to them. I know it's a lot of education on your part. I know it adds to your mental load, but unfortunately, there's no one else who's going to do it. I do a lot of it too, but I don't come at it with the same lived experience. And some of your decision makers will have some connection to disability that they may share with you, and they may understand in ways that you didn't expect what your challenges are. Others of them have no connection to disability, and this will be a reminder and a constant reminder that they need to think about something different that they haven't necessarily been exposed to before. Sometimes changes will happen. Always take an opportunity to say thank you when something good happens, because there aren't necessarily always opportunities to say thank you. So thank you when appropriate is good. And, you know, advocacy is a really long game. We've been at this, the Board for People with Developmental Disabilities has been in existence for 50 years. There've been a lot of changes that have happened in 50 years, and we haven't solved all the problems yet. I feel like we have pretty good job security, given that we have a culture where the largest minority population is not how we orient ourselves. We're going to need to keep advocating, because one thing is true: we can make progress, but we can also slide backwards. And there are lots of bad ideas that we used to do and think were normal that we don't do anymore, but could be done again. So you can hear a lot of no's before you hear yes. And all of you are very capable of keeping the long game in mind and saying those words. Sally Flashberger is now going to convene our panel. And I am going to hit this button so we don't see the.
All right. So Stacy, Ginger, Chris, Felicia, who else? David. If you guys want to come up front, that would be great. Yes. All right. And we have Zach online. So I'm just gonna, let's see. I think the tech person was going to spotlight him for me. I can do it if you want me to. There's his video. Hey, Zach, do you want to unmute and speak so we can see if we can hear you?
Hello.
Yes, that sounds pretty well.
Thank you for accommodating me. I wish I could be there today.
Except when you're going to need to mute. All right, it should be okay. All right. All right. So one of the programs that we run is our Partners in Policymaking program at BPDD. I'm going to go over here. Sorry. And so these are great partners who have gone through the program and have done advocacy around the state. And so we're really excited to have everyone here. We have Stacy Ellingen. Did I say that right? Felicia. Oh my God. This is like the 58-year-old mind. Felicia, what's your last name? Why can't I think of your last name? What? Claiborne. Chris Patterson, David Pino, and Ginger Buke. Oh, I did it. Whoa. So we're really excited to have them here today speaking about advocacy. And so we're just going to get right. Oh, and Zach Lillo's online. So we're going to just go through our questions. I got to find them on my phone. Sorry. Jenny and I had the worst problem getting these questions all good. So, okay, I'm going to start with Stacy. How have you established yourself as a credible disability voice in the community?
After I graduated from UW-Whitewater, I started looking for employment opportunities. Long story short, I had no intention of working and being involved in the advocacy world. I was planning on being a graphic designer and designing ads for a company. However, while job searching and learning how to navigate the adult long-term care system, I began to realize that I may have more impact sharing my story and experiences. Eventually, I was fortunate to find some great connections, which ultimately has led me to the opportunities I have today. Being quote-unquote nonverbal, what I am about to say might sound a bit funny, but it's the truth. I learned to speak up. I learned that sharing my story and experiences can have a powerful impact. I started attending various events and asserting myself. I took advantage of every opportunity I found and tried to make people aware that I had a voice and I could contribute a lot. Ultimately, I made sure that my voice was being heard, and that's what I continue to do today.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay, Felicia.
What I done was back in the early 90s, I went and advocated for a for one of the schools in the Milwaukee community where it was closing. And what happened was that they were closing because of some costs of things, and it was a bad asset to the community because of the neighborhood. So it was the disability part in that. So I got a chance to advocate for that type of and then the journey just started. And what I did was it just made myself available and was at the time just saying what else is I can do. And then there was not a lot I could do at the time. But then I had an opening to be on the paratransit board and from in the early 2000s. And then from there, it went from being part of People First Wisconsin in the early 2000s. And then I found out about Employment First Conference and then self-determination. And it's led from there to being on the board of the board with developmental disabilities and got a chance to branch out from there from In Control Wisconsin, Disability Rights Wisconsin, and just being a part of Partners helped me so to be able, while I was in Partners, to find those open avenues to be able to take part in.
Sure, thanks. I think like Stacy and Felicia said, a couple things that I was going to mention too. One is your connections, your networking, and I also think Partners really helped me as well. So been in the field for a long time, have a sister with a disability, but really Partners really, even though you think you know it, it helps you go through the process. But the networks, but I also think just going back to why you're doing what you do helps you establish credible and the integrity of what you're doing really helps with being establishing being a credible voice in your community. So sometimes you have to think about why you're doing it and go back to that, and then that'll help you.
So I would say the biggest thing is forming connections with policymakers. And I was also on the Partners in Policymaking class. I attended the first class in 2011. And it really opened my eyes to a lot of things with how laws are being made and how things are being impacted. So I guess that's pretty much it. So.
So my partner's experience kind of enhanced what I already knew. I was a credible resource in the Fond du Lac Oshkosh community through our local UCP affiliate, and then when I and UCP helped me with a couple of challenges that were discriminatory, and from there I moved into my own apartment, which I've been in for 34 years, and my partner's experience helped me to get to know my legislators. I formed a really good partnership with my state representative Gordon Hintz, and then I really am starting a good relationship with my new state representative, Lori Palmari, because she started at the city level and knows the challenges that the Oshkosh community has.
All right, good. I'm not. I'm coming over. All right, Zach, you're up.
Partners really helped me. So I've a sibling with a disability, and I've been around the disability community my whole life. I'm professionally involved also in the disability community, and I think the biggest benefit I got from Partners was just the kind of overall knowledge of interacting with policymakers, and especially when it comes to thinking about how to benefit our people. It gave me the knowledge to be able to share information about getting benefits, and what's the language you should use with the service providers, and pretty much any type of advocating politically or personally, financially, that can benefit the folks that I serve, and then also helping out my own family with my parents about trying to get what's best for my brother. So I'd say just the day-to-day knowledge has been very, very helpful.
So I'll go back to you first, Zach, and tell us how you develop those relationships with your local or decision makers.
I had a recent move, and I have yet to connect with my local reps here in Milwaukee. I'd say the biggest on the ground advocating I have been doing is we've been hosting kind of based off of election cycles, but I've been doing like some easy learning seminars for some of the folks that I serve and just love Living Our Visions Inc. members in general about like what they need to do to become registered if they're not, or like where their local voting places, how to interact with politicians. So I've been trying to take the information I learned from Partners and try and spread it to the overall disability community so that we can be as informed of a voting populace as possible.
Sounds good. Ginger, how about you? I know you kind of talked about this a little bit, but how are you going about developing those relationships?
I'm trying to develop those relationships by going to well after disability advocacy day this year, Lori Palmer had like open forum, and I really taught some people there that the disability community really does have a voice, and we just need to amplify it.
That's excellent. All good suggestions. All right. I'll turn to Bruce.
One of the things that and how I've developed my relationship with my decision maker was I got to know them on a personal level. Many politicians are business owners as well. So by learning how to talk to them and learning about their business, I developed that relationship with them. So
Yep. So like Zach, I have recently moved, but I'm kind of lucky because one of my new school board members is Lisa Pugh. So who probably a lot of you know. So so I just go to Lisa and ask her everything and tell her, you know, and see what I need to do. But no, it's nice. And actually one of my representatives too is actually from the town I was in for a long, long time, and she was actually on the school board before, so know her a little bit. So it just like Sally said, you might be surprised at who you know. That's part of your officials. So I still have some work to do though.
For me, my state senator goes to church with me, and so I get a chance to talk to her, and I always tell her right around that March part, oh, we're coming to see you up in March now. So, and all the time, I always email them on the concern. The issue that we just had was the paratransit taxi contract in Milwaukee County, where they took it away and they're trying to find an alternate. And so I had a chance to be a part of the task force there, and they said contact your legislature. So I contacted my representative in my district, and they said they're 100% for us to keep it. So I make sure that when I'm up in March at Disability Advocacy Day in the Capitol, I always let people know, okay, tell me your issues now so I can advocate, because I'm going on their behalf. They may not can come physically or virtually, but that's how I do that.
Same question.
As funny as it sounds, I make sure they know who I am and I keep them informed. Every chance I get, I email them about what could be done to help improve lives of people with disabilities. I actually have a personal connection with one of my senators. I have been best friends with his cousin for over 30 years. This particular legislator is on the opposite side of the aisle, but often it helps when they know you have a connection. Every connection, even though it likely won't change the person's stance on a particular issue, bringing that personal aspect to it may make the legislator think twice before deciding on something. I make sure to do in-person visits every chance I get. Often, you only have the opportunity to meet with the staffers for the legislators. Still take those opportunities. Those legislative aides report to the senators and representatives. I was in Madison 2 weeks ago and made a point of meeting with a staff member of my senator and representative. It's so important to keep them aware of what is going on.
All right, I'm going to go back around again. So I'm going to go, Stacy, can you tell us about an experience you had bringing a problem to a local decision maker. How did you let the person know about the problem, and were you successful in finding a solution?
Although I have gotten into more topics over the years, anyone who knows me knows that I am most passionate about the caregiver crisis. That's because I deal with it every single day. I feel like my life revolves around it. I talk about it every single time I meet with legislators. I have done everything from writing letters, to speaking at press events, to submitting comments on the governor's budget, to writing op-eds for newspapers, to testifying in front of Joint Finance, to talking on radio shows about the caregiver crisis. Legislators definitely know about it. Have we been successful in solving it? Unfortunately, not yet. Are we making progress? Albeit very slowly, but the optimist in me thinks we are. Last year, we got a 5% increase in home and community-based services, and a few years ago, personal care got an increase. These are far from adequate, but it was a start. I honestly don't know what it's going to take to solve this huge problem, but I do know that there is a big group of people who are committed to advocating until the problem is solved.
Thank you. All right, Felicia. I know you talked a little bit about some issues you've worked on, but
One that really stands out, and I was meeting with my pastor on another issue, but he brought this up. It was about a traffic light where our previous building was. And I went and I called, I almost went down there, but they told us that it would cost $4,500 for us to put a traffic light there. And it's just like a light turned on and said, we don't want to do that. And so what they did was they put one there. It was the Tuesday before Thanksgiving. I can't remember what year. I know it's in the 2000s that a traffic light was right there. And a letter from the mayor, our previous mayor there in Wisconsin, in Milwaukee, said, if you have another situation, contact me and I will be able to help you. And that's one of the things that I remember that I advocated for.
That's funny. I remember advocating for a traffic light at my old house too. And it went up the year after, or no, like a couple months after I moved, it really went up. So it made it. So mine's a little bit different. So we support folks with technology in their houses instead of having to have a staff. And we've had some scenarios where people in 3 to 4 bed homes have wanted to use our services, but due to a regulation that's in Chapter 88, they're not allowed to. So I've gone to local decision makers. Actually, I've talked to the governor about this issue before. We've joined a coalition now to take this to the legislators, the Wisconsin Tech First Coalition, just to figure out strategies. But it came down to more of a regulation and an oversight by DQA versus going to a legislator. So right now, still working on it. I will say that we did get a little bit of compromise to say it is allowed if you get a waiver, and the DQA website actually gave some helpful hints on how to go about to get that waiver. So it was a little bit of progress, but still are getting some denials, and it's not been a great progress, but we made some headway. But I learned a lot throughout the process.
So one of the issues that I really feel I had a lot of experience on is MAP, Medical Assistance Purchase Plan. That yeah. For 5 years, I have advocated to get that law changed, and how it worked before with the premiums were very very inadequate, very wrong. Um, I, along with a whole bunch of other people, we got together and we fought and we actually were on the work group that actually helped make changes to the medical assistance purchase plan. But I think that the biggest thing is you have to look for a way to highlight the return on investment, and that's what a lot of lawmakers like to hear. If you're penalized for working, and under the old MAP law you were, now everybody pays a fair amount, and but it's just the biggest thing that you have to look at. So that's pretty much it. So
You want the question again? No problem. Tell us about an experience you had bringing a problem to a local decision maker. How did you let the person know about the problem? Were you successful in finding a solution?
I have many scenarios,
Pick one.
but
Maybe talk about the park.
yeah, so recreation wise, there kids and adults like to like be on playground equipment together, parents, kids, grandparents, kids, and we found out in the city of Oshkosh there wasn't a accessible park that a person in a wheelchair could go to without a barrier, meaning railroad tie blocking your way, and then like a pit of mulch and the playground equipment. So we formed a committee that we got a hold of our parks director and told him that these parks do not work for people with disabilities, and then from there we had to raise a certain amount of money to prove that we were a worthy cause, and when we met our half of the cost to build the playground, the city chipped in the other half and chipped in like a little extra to kind of help the maintenance and build a fence line around it so that children with autism and kids that like to dart like in out of places, they actually had to slow down and think about where the access points were. And we had like, I think, almost 1,500 people at the grand opening because we made it like a community celebration.
All right, Zach, how about you? Do you have a? query?
I don't have a one where I'm interacting directly with anybody, but I did. I've been trying to find ways that I can start advocating more directly. I did attend a financial meeting earlier this year. I never would have done that before without partners in policymaking because before I saw lawmakers as these kind of like, I don't know, different and like not like personable or anything. And I think that one of the things that really opened me up about partners was just that they're people just like us, and it's not as terrifying as the talk. So just being able to attend something like that and give my feedback. I believe we were pushing for, you know, additional funding for caregivers and better pay for respite workers. But that was a big thing. I would not have done that before partners in policymaking.
Okay, we're almost at 4 o'clock. I just want people to give one piece of advice to the group. So Zach, you go.
It's directly ties. Don't be scared interacting with these people. Be confident. They're here to serve you. They're our employees, and for the most part, most politicians that you'll deal with on a day-to-day basis are very respectful, and they want to hear what you have to say. And it's important that everybody, you know, has a voice and shares what they need and need from the government to live as full of a life as possible.
Okay. Ginger, I'm gonna go back.
One piece of advice for anyone with a disability is keep telling your story until somebody listens. Because once somebody listens, that's when we can change the world we live in.
Excellent.
David? Be persistent.
So there's been some good ones. I'll just add, so it seems like politics seems so polarizing, and don't let it get you down, because a lot of times, you know, people on both party lines actually care about the issues for people with disabilities, and you can find some common ground for the issues that we're fighting for. And you know, so don't be scared, or don't be just don't feel like just because maybe it's not the party you're going to vote for that I shouldn't talk to your representative, because they really do care about both issues. And if you look across like history, there's been laws like nationwide on both sides of the aisle that have passed. So and a lot of times decisions get made on a lot lower level from people that we know and hang out with every day.
I would have to say, for to give you advice, is to keep fighting, because it's a lot of us that makes change also. One person makes a difference, but a whole team of us makes a change also. So I want to tell us, keep fighting, because change is coming, because we, as Tammy has told us, we're the second minority in the world. So we got to make sure that our whole world is accessible for us, because nothing without us about us.
Nothing about us without us. All right, Stacy, you're gonna wrap us up.
I feel like I sound like a broken record, but get involved. If meeting with legislators isn't for you, that's fine. Write letters. Make calls. Type emails. I understand some people aren't comfortable sharing their story and experiences, but I truly believe that that's what has the most impact. If you aren't comfortable sharing your story, work on developing those connections and relationships. The more comfortable you become, the easier it will be to share your experiences.
Awesome. A round of applause for our panelists, please. We're sorry we're out of time, but these good folks, I believe, will be here all week. So when you see them, if you have any questions, or come to the BPDD table, we're happy to answer any questions. Jenny has something she wants to say. I think it's about the evaluation maybe, or. All right, there is an evaluation on the table.
And a really quick one. If this piqued your interest and you really like this session, we do have a 6-session partners and policy making program for people with disabilities. And and for parents who have children under the age of 21, and we do have applications. They're due on Friday. Please fill out the eval, that quick little slip. We appreciate that. And if you need CEU credits, I have the password. So you can just come up to me. I'll give you the password for those credits. All right. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for sticking it out till the end.